there's a new extremist group that just made an appearance.
You read about what happened to Ananias and Sapphira in Acts chapter 5 when they lied to the Holy Spirit. They were both struck dead by God in the instant. And we're going to bring that story to bear on everyone who's involved in election fraud. We're going to be saying to them, beware when you do this, because you might just find yourself standing before God a lot sooner than you thought. And it's not going to be a happy time when you do. So nothing would cure election fraud like a couple of people dropping dead in the moment.
That is absolutely psychotic. This is Bill Cook, and he's I don't know if he's like the founder, but he's at least the leader of something called the Black Robe Regiment. Now, if you've watched me before, then you'll know that the Black Robe Regiment is something that was created by David Barton, this guy right here. He claimed that back before the Revolutionary War happened, there were pastors who wore their black robes as the pastors that they were. And at the end of the service, they'd take their robes off and they would, militarize their church, turn them into a full-blown military regiment. And come to find out, the term Black Robe Regiment didn't exist until he said it. His book was the first mention of the term Black Robe Regiment in the 1990s. I mean, maybe he got it from somebody else, but it isn't to be found like in any like Google books or anything where people search books en masse. I mean, you can like go to Google and look up any word and see how common it is in different uses and stuff like that. Anyway, Black Robe Regiment, as far as anyone can tell, was created by David Barton. And it's a fictitious thing designed to get pastors to militarize their churches, turn them into military, like platoons, turn them into little units that can link together to create a full-blown army. And when that army is called upon by whoever happens to be leading the Republican Party at that moment, presumably, I mean, these people are far-right Trump supporters. This guy on the left, Bill Cook, he's an oath keeper. He wore the shirts and everything, I think. Anyway, whenever they're called upon, these people will come together and create these militaries. If you're unfamiliar with David Barton, though, I have a bunch of videos on him, but he just like brazenly lies about things. Just flat out falsifies information. This is just like one example of him just straight up lying about things. This is from early May 2024.
If you look at the annual report for the public schools of New Jersey in 1816, this is what they put out as the annual report. They're talking about the first and second grades. They call them the first and second classes.
No. You could read this original paper that he's talking about here. This is a report that is clearly talking about a Sunday school dividing people into different groups, 7 different classes. Some of the kids couldn't read, some of them could read, and they were all trying to, memorize certain books of the Bible. Sunday school. It's pretty clear. This is just him lying, right? It doesn't say anything about grades. He's saying this is in public school. No, it's not.
It says, all the scholars of the first and second classes commit to memory portions of the New Testament or Psalms, a lesson of the Catechism, several hymns, and the text of the preceding Sabbath. So every kid in first and second grade memorized that. Now, by the way,
No, it's a lie. He lied, right? I don't know how else to interpret this. Is he like making this up, or is he what? I don't know. This is a type of situation where I think he's adhering to the ends justify the means principle. I have an end in mind. I want to create a Christian state where everybody has Christianity imposed upon them. Oh, he's also a libertarian nutcase. So that's the end I have in mind. The means that I use to get there are irrelevant. I can do anything. I can lie, cheat, manipulate, whatever it is, as long as it, reaches my goals. I think that he knows that he's lying, in my opinion.
Memorize that. Now, by the way, what is the text of the preceding Sabbath? It's simple. Whatever Pastor Mike talked about last week, you memorize all the verses he mentioned in the sermon. By the way, that's probably not a bad idea to do. Figure out whatever verses he mentioned in the sermon and through the week.
Okay, this is very obviously about a Sunday school, right? Pastor Mike. I assume he's just talking about some random pastor, right? Like whoever your pastor is, they're supposed to memorize that stuff. This is a Sunday school. He's saying it's a public school. in New Jersey. No, it isn't.
Try to memorize every verse that he talked about. That's what public schools were doing in New Jersey in
No.
1816.
He just fabricated this stuff. See what I'm saying? So this Black Robe Regiment thing, it's fake. It never existed. And either way, he's trying to use that as like the foundation to create a militarized group in the U.S. right now, which Bill Cook is now doing. But when he says the Black Robe Regiment existed before 1776, it was before we had a constitution, before this country was created as a secular republic, before all of that stuff. Constitution was created in 1787 and ratified, I think, in 89 or 88 or 89. He's saying this happened before the Revolutionary War and during the war. Anyway, new extremist group, the Black Robe Regiment. There's something called the Black Regiment, and that was a group of Black Americans who, I don't remember what they did. They did something notable. Maybe in World War II, the Black Regiment from Massachusetts. Nothing to do with pastors taking their robes off. But doesn't matter. Bill Cook here is going to be absolutely psychotic anyway. I found this clip of him recruiting for his Black Robe Regiment, his militarized church organization. And I had to see the whole thing. I went through the entire video and I found some absolutely psychotic clips. In fact, this is something we're probably going to watch the entirety of it on my Unfiltered YouTube channel, Wednesday, Thursday mornings, 10:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. I watch stuff like this. So if you want to see the whole video from this guy, check it out. It's in the description. But listen to what he says here. This is his recruiting speech, his recruiting sermon that he's doing. Quick interjection, this won't take long, I promise. I'd appreciate it if you watched to the end of the video, or at least a couple extra seconds, because YouTube bases its algorithm off of watch time. The more watch time a video has, the further the video will go. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I'm selling my book, Understanding Jehovah's Witnesses, 400 pages, and my second book, 100 Questions for Jehovah's Witnesses, which is about 80 pages. And you can find them both there on the website. Audio form, ebook form, whatever. It's about my experiences within the religion and the history of the religion generally. The 100 questions are intended to challenge your religious leader, so I'd appreciate it if you give it a read. Okay, back to the video.
It's been well known among American clergy that some British leaders were referring to them as the Black Regiment.
Black Regiment was that black group from Massachusetts. I don't have any clue what he's talking about here. Damn, I thought I could spell Massachusetts correctly. I got it wrong. I was so close. Here you go, 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment was an infantry regiment that saw extensive service in the Union Army during the American Civil War. The unit was the second African-American regiment following the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry Regiment, organized in the northern states during the Civil War. Authorized by Emancipation Proclamation, the regiment consisted of African-American enlisted men commanded by white officers. That's what the Black Regiment was. Had nothing to do with the Revolutionary War. It's 100 years later, practically. He's just making it up. Well, I don't know that Bill Cook is, but David Barton did.
That some British leaders were referring to them as the Black Regiment. They would have adopted the name as a badge of honor.
The Founding Fathers? No, they wouldn't. They're secular. They don't want to militarize churches. John Adams is like the only exception, practically. A couple others, maybe. But Thomas Jefferson and, the framers of the Constitution, nearly all of the other Founding Fathers, Benjamin Franklin and everybody else, they were secular. Thomas Jefferson's famous for being one of the founders of the Enlightenment movement.
They wouldn't have run. What's the local government going to say? What are FBI pre-dawn raids going to say when they hear that I'm Black Regiment?
He's pretending to be persecuted right now. He's pretending that he's like one of the January 6th people. I think he might have been at January 6th. He's pretending that he lives in fear of being searched by the FBI. Guess who doesn't live in fear of being searched by the FBI? Guess who has 2 thumbs and doesn't live in fear of being searched by the FBI? This guy. Wonder why? Because I'm not doing psychotic stuff all the time. Maybe try that and see if you live in fear of that one day. If you're not doing like insanely illegal things, like what Josh Duggar did to get arrested by the FBI, or I don't know, what the January 6th people did or whatever, then you don't have to worry about the FBI arresting you for absolutely no reason, just showing up and arresting you. You know, he's got to really lean into that persecution complex, though, right? Quick interjection. This won't take long, I promise. I just want to say I'd appreciate it if you check my Patreon. owenmorgan.com/Patreon to find it. YouTube's algorithm goes up and down, so I can never predict where it's going to be. Having patrons gives me some level of stability. Okay, back to the video.
That I'm a pastor who's preaching the whole counsel of God, that's not afraid to preach liberty.
Not afraid to preach liberty, okay? The whole counsel of God and liberty?
Jesus is not returning for a passive eschatology.
Meaning end times beliefs. He's not returning for a pacifist end times situation. He's coming to make war, is what he's saying here, in the end.
Content to stand by while liberty and its blessings are destroyed.
I love that, dude. Jesus is not coming here to be nice and stand by while liberty is destroyed. He's going to get violent. Okay, I think he missed the point of a lot of things in the Bible. First, Jesus was an apocalyptic preacher of the era, and more than anything, spoke about how much he hated the rich and loved the poor. That's what Jesus was all about. That's his whole thing. And he was, seemed to be like a pacifist in a lot of ways, right? If your brother hits you, then turn the other cheek. Something to that, whatever that verse says. I don't remember now. Jesus was very nonviolent and pacifist. That's the first thing. And second, the first commandment contradicts the first amendment. Got that from Aaron Ra. You shall have no other gods before me is the first commandment. The first amendment says you have freedom of religion and speech and everything else. You cannot have both. So Jesus is coming to maintain liberty, huh? Quote unquote. He's coming to make the U.S. government span the entire world. That is actually the belief. And he has like this whole winding backward religious explanation for why the United States government is the special chosen one. And it relates to like Jews staying behind, you know, when they were captured in Babylon and then moving up through the Caucasus Mountains and British Isles, so on and so forth. He thinks that America is the new Israel, the new covenant, or in covenant with God. Absolutely insane. So he thinks that Jesus is going to come and destroy everything. Go on. To maintain liberty and install the U.S. Okay, I'm listening.
Are destroyed. Refusal to address political topics from the desk. That's the old-fashioned way of talking about the pulpit.
Okay. Where is he reading from something?
A refusal to address political topics from the desk is tantamount to sodomy.
Is he reading? Well, is he pretending to read a Bible verse? What's happening here? And I didn't know that the Bible ranked sins as like one is worse than the other or whatever. Where does lying rank in the sin list? Are you using the 10 commandments or the 613 commandments, the old law, that the Mosaic law that Jesus came and fulfilled so we don't have to follow it anymore? Are you using that as like a ranking list? So shellfish is like way down here. So if you eat shellfish, it's not so bad. Okay. I guess sodomy is equally as bad as not talking about political topics. Go on.
A refusal to address political topics from the desk is tantamount to sodomy. It's no less evil than sodomy because it eviscerates the salt of the earth and seeds the civil society to enslavement.
That is absolutely psychotic. What is happening right now? What is this? This extremist group is completely off the rails. Like their belief system about this is backward. And none of it connects to actual verses in the Bible. None of it connects back to scripture. And they seem to have this strongly held belief that it does. This is just nuts. There's another clip. This is just a few minutes later.
The reason America is near death is that our theological academies no longer turn out signatories to the Declaration of Independence. Like John Witherspoon, who had educated a number of the co-signers in the principles of good government. Submission to the Johnson Amendment is the selling of one's soul. Again.
Oh my God. Johnson Amendment is the amendment in U.S. tax code that basically says you are not legally allowed to talk about or to endorse a political candidate or oppose a political candidate. That's what it specifically says. From the pulpit. You as a person can, but you as a pastor from the pulpit, you can't. Or you lose tax-exempt status. That's all. You just have to pay taxes like everybody else. Simple as that. So he says that complying with the Johnson Amendment, or the Johnson Amendment generally, is like from the pit of hell or whatever. Okay.
Good government. Submission to the Johnson Amendment is the selling of one's soul. Again,
The selling of one's soul.
for a mess of pottage. I'm getting some amens down here. So, about almost 2 years ago in 2022, in the summer, we did a commissioning of pastors. We're going to do another commissioning today.
It's a recruitment meeting for the Black Robe Regiment, militarized churches where they do target training and the whole 9 yards. They are training people to be full-blown soldiers. You know, there was a group called the Steel Helmets in Germany, World War II era, Steel Helmets. It was a group of veterans from World War I who gathered together and would do marches and stuff to show how influential and powerful they are, so that, you know, politicians would be more likely to side with them on issues. That seems like exactly what's happening here, right? They're joining like a militarized group here to be used as an army if need be. Germany at the time had sanctions placed on them. They were not allowed to have a military larger than 100,000 troops and a certain number of like boats and planes and so on. And one of the many ways they sidestepped that was by militarizing people like this. This guy is creating an oppositional military to the United States military, made up of veterans and churchgoers of various sorts, and training them, giving them target training and the whole 9 yards in preparation for the day that they will be used against this guy's perceived political enemies, whoever that happens to be. He's not a nobody either.
About 150 pastors participated. They took that Gideon's 300 pledge that's been out on the table. We have a few copies up here, and they signed it. It is an iconoclastic act.
150 pastors, 150 churches are part of the Black Robe Regiment.
Iconoclastic act.
Wait, what does iconoclastic mean? I forget. Characterized by attack on cherished beliefs or institutions, what iconoclastic means. So it's an attack on cherished beliefs or institutions. Go on.
It is an iconoclastic act for a pastor to sign that pledge.
Okay, yeah, I suppose.
And conduct their behavior in accordance with it.
Like target training.
It was the first time in leading the Black Robe Regiment, America's Black Robe Regiment, that I've been attacked, publicly attacked in the media.
I wonder why.
Somebody said earlier received a postcard from Satan. That's kind of weird.
He received a postcard from Satan. That's funny. It's like that guy that kept putting tarot cards under the wood chips in Greg Locke's tent, like where he holds his church services. That's hilarious. That is a peaceful form of protest that I think I can approve of. I love that. Sending a postcard to him from Satan. I wonder what it said.
And since then have received postcards every month.
From Satan?
I guess in an effort to jostle me, rattle my cage.
Does that rattle your cage? Getting postcards from Satan?
But
I mean, how do you know it's not the real Satan? It could be, right?
So I knew that Gideon's 300 pledge was over the target. It was over the target.
So when I do something psychotic and get pushback from society, that means I'm doing the right thing. Well, I mean, you just go all the way if you really want. You want some pushback? Come out as a cannibal. You get pushback for that one. That must be the right thing, right? This logic falls to pieces after the lightest scrutiny. We know we're doing the right thing because we're getting pushback. What? Listen to his recruitment here. This is them actually trying to sign people up.
Let me also say that how many of you are not actually ordained pastors? You've never been ordained and you haven't received ordination, because if you are in that category, our network will provide that for you as well, because we also give ordination papers to those who are not ordained by their local church, because a lot of people are in the marketplace. And again, we're shifting the paradigm that people in the marketplace can be. So who has not received any kind of ordination paper? Okay. And so contact me afterwards and we'll make sure that you get something. But we're ordaining and commissioning all of you, because this is something that the Lord has really led Bill to do, that I feel is really of the Lord, because it's basically, we're in war. It's recruitment. We're saying we need
You hearing this? We're in war. It's recruitment.
war. It's recruitment. We're saying we need as many soldiers as possible. And it's God's army, and it's just acceleration on your life. And that's why God brought you here, for that purposes. So
Acceleration on your life? Does that mean that, like, everybody there should expect to die young? I don't know what that means. Anyway, they were recruiting for an army. That's what they're doing. This is an extremist group, a violent extremist group who is training churchgoers, to be a military like the steel helmets. Psychotic. I mean, I guess people can do whatever they want. They're free to do that. But the FBI, I really hope that they have them on tap, for real. I hope that they're listening to every word out of Bill Cook's mouth, because that's psychotic. That's not even the craziest thing he's done. I mean, I showed you the clip at the beginning from before of him saying, all that stuff about killing people who commit election fraud. Who commits election fraud? Who he believes is doing it, not who was actually doing it. If he was attacking people who actually committed election fraud, it would, it would be Republicans he was attacking by and large. One more clip from Bill Cook. This one is from July 20th, 2023.
And essentially what Jesus told the apostles, the 11, was go into all my realm, preach this good news, preach the gospel of liberty.
I don't think Jesus said a god word about preaching the gospel of liberty. What are you talking about right now?
Command them to obey me. Basically, institute the government of God throughout every square inch of the earth. So why do we think the gospel's not political? It is political, which is why our enemies know it's political. And that's why they seek to destroy the church and exterminate Christianity all over the earth. If COVID was anything, it was an effort to exterminate Christendom throughout the earth.
Christendom is a bad thing, usually, right? Christendom is false religion, I think, generally is how it's viewed.
And the strategy continues. We are called as the church to govern.
That is psychotic, straight up, man. What is wrong with this guy? Talking about exterminating people. We are called to govern. I wonder how he gets past Romans 13:1. Let me just pull up Romans 13 here. It's pretty on the nose. It's very clear. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. So no matter what, subject yourself to the governing authorities, period. The authorities that exist have been established by God, good or bad. They are being used for God's purpose, is kind of the implication here, is what I'm picking up. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. So there's an apocryphal text that talks about Paul's death, claims that he was crucified upside down, and it's bizarre. Anyway, I don't think that it's real, but in the text it said Paul was, the death penalty was on his head, and he fled Rome for his own protection, so he wasn't caught and killed. And God, I think, came to him in a dream, maybe, and said, you need to go back and submit yourself to the governing authorities so that you die like Jesus died or whatever. And you're supposed to do it upside down to show that everything is backward in this world, basically, is what he said. Everything is backward. We come out of the womb, or he said Adam and Eve came out of the womb head first. That's what it says. I'm not even joking. Adam and Eve were born head first, but they needed to be born legs first. I don't know, because everything is backwards, and that's why he was crucified upside down. Anyway, the point is that Paul even submitted himself to the governing authorities, supposedly. How is this guy, Bill Cook, getting around this very obvious verse here? Romans 13:1. I don't understand. Of course, he just never addresses it. He pretends this verse doesn't exist. Just zips his lips, doesn't say a word about it. I bet he never reads this from the pulpit. Has he ever, in his entire career as a pastor, read this verse? I would put money on no. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. This is just ridiculous.